To prepare your salt dough, you'll need 2 cups of plain flour in a bowl, and we're going to add 1 cup of salt. Give that a little stir with your spoon to make sure they're both mixed together well, and then start to add your water a little bit at a time. You can do a teaspoon or a few each time, or if you're very steady, well, I'm not very steady with my hands, you can add a small amount from a cup. Try to add the water gradually, because if you add too much, it will be too sloppy. You want the dough to come together and come away from the sides of the bowl, so you can get your hands in and start mixing it too. And gradually the dough will start to form together. You want the dough to be nice and smooth and not bitty or falling apart. Okay, so knead it well with your hands. Use the back of your palm and push down into the dough and get it to come together like this. Once you've got it at this state, get your baking tray with a little bit of baking paper on it and create some weird kind of oval shapes. They don't have to be very neat, and in fact the more irregular they are, the better. And I'm creating like an odd texture at the end of the shapes just so that they look more natural. I'm using my thumbs to kind of pinch and rip the edges. You want your dough to be roughly about 2 digestive biscuits together thick. If it's any thicker than that, it takes quite a long time to dry out the dough in the oven. So use your hands to push down the dough to kind of roll it out, and use your thumbnail to scrape against the edge to create that nice raw edge there. I'm going to create 3 fossils here. So I'm going to do 3 different footprints of 3 different dinosaurs. Make sure that your salt dough is on that baking paper and they're not touching. You want them to be 3 separate ones, and you don't want it to stick to the pan when it's baking in the oven. So have some fun playing with your dough with your fingers, and once you've got your shapes that you like, you can start to create the fossils. I'm going to create some surface texture on the dough first. I'm stamping a really heavy, dense, bristly brush into the dough. You can try different brushes. This is a fan brush. It creates a smaller dotted pattern. And this is going to create good texture and make your fossil look a little bit more natural. Here I'm using a scrubbing brush, and I'm really stamping down. You can sort of see the difference between the doughs. It's not smooth anymore. It's got some pattern on the surface area. You can try all sorts of different things to create surface texture on your dough. You might even go into the garden and find some leaves, or this is a dried thistle, and it creates kind of like a cracked shape that I really liked. That really reminded me of the fossils I've seen in the Natural History Museum. You can even press your your sticks and flowers into the dough too, and when you bake them, that creates another element for your natural fossils. Now I'm going to start to create my footprints. This is a palette knife which is used for painting. You could use a bread knife, a spoon, the back of a paintbrush or a pen, whatever you'd like. I'm carving out the dough to create a negative image, and so I'm removing pieces of the dough. I'm not going all the way through, not like a cookie cutter. I'm only going halfway through, and here I'm using my finger to scrape against the dough to create a really strong outline where there's like a high part and a wall and then a lower part. I'm doing the claw next, so I'm using the back of a paintbrush and I push it halfway into the dough, and I do a little wiggle shape to create kind of like a triangle, and that would be really a really good way of creating claws, because claws have a pointed edge, so they will naturally leave a really strong indent into the dough. I'm going to create a gallimimus now. So this is a running sort of bird. They're in Jurassic World. And in Jurassic Park, the first movie. I'm using the end of my palette knife, but you could use a paintbrush like I did here, or the back of a spoon. And again, I'm taking away pieces of the dough so that I can create a negative image. Use your thumb or your finger and run it against the walls of your footprint, and that's going to create a really definite image. So there is my second footprint. Now lastly, I'm going to create kind of a small triceratops type of footprint. So Because this isn't a predatory animal, he's a herbivore, so he eats plants and leaves. He doesn't have any claws. He has more of a rhino type footprint, and so this one has rounded shapes. And this one was the funnest one to make because I could really use my fingers to create these shapes. So have fun pushing, sticking things into the dough to make your footprints. They should look like this, and they're going to be placed in the oven at 200 degrees for about an hour. Thickness of your dough will change how long you need to bake them, so keep an eye on them. After they've come out of the oven, I made sure I cooled them completely so they're no longer hot, and they look like this. Really cool. You can see the indent of the footprint there. So that's my Velociraptor, that's my Gallimimus, and this is my herbivore, my little herbivore one. So they're really hard. The salt, when you bake it, heats up quite a lot and it stays hot for quite a long time. So I do recommend you let them cool for a good half an hour at least before you even attempt to try and paint them. If you want to, you don't have to. So we're going to do some dry brushing using some paints. I recommend acrylic, just because they have a plastic polymer to them, and so they kind of dry a little bit quicker and they don't affect the salt dough. Because they haven't got quite a lot of water in them. They've got more of a plastic content. So we're just going to do some dry brushing. You don't have to do this, like I said. You can just leave them as this if you want. I'm going to do a little bit of dry brushing on fast mode, and I'll show you what it looks like at the end. So here are my finished dinosaur footprint fossils. I thought I'd show you them outside in the sunshine. You can see the colours on them. So I just did some light dry brushing. And a fun game you can do is you can put them into a bucket or a plant pot or a tray of soil or sand like this. And then you can get yourself a small brush and you can imitate an archaeological dig. So archaeologists would often uncover dinosaur footprints and fossils, and they would use one of these almost stippling type brushes to dust out any dirt or soil or debris that were inside the fossils. So that's a fun game that you can do with these two. That would be quite cool. So there you go, there's my finished dinosaur salt dough footprint fossils. I think you'll agree that they turned out pretty well. So have a go at home making these and let me know how you go. Have lots of fun digging and poking things into the salt dough before you bake it. Have a wonderful day, guys. Bye.